Hi guys, welcome back. This is the second video tutorial of Advanced Java. As we discussed in previous tutorial, first we are going to cover about features of Java in specific to version. So first we can see Java 5 features. Let me clear the screen. So first we are going to discuss about features of Java 5. Java 5 or 5, 4 or 5 in between. So in between 4 or 5, what are the new features are coming out to the market? So features are like for each loop and whereas static import, auto boxing. People who are already using Java 7, they might use these features already if you have knowledge or without knowing these specific to Java 5. So these are all the features actually introduced in Java 5 and enums, generics. So these are all the features are introduced in Java 4 or 5 in between. So if interviewer asks you like what are the features are introduced in Java 5, then you can list out all these things. So let us go to the Eclipse. There we can see uh, a brief about how to write these things. So we get to know how to explain in the interviews also. Let's go to the Eclipse and we can see one by one how we can use it. So for that, I'm just creating a new package within this core Java. So for advanced Java, once we started advanced Java topics like JDBC and servlets and all, then we can create a new project because this project will not work out for that because it's a dynamic web pages we have to create, so that the project itself having a different approach to create. It's a web application we have to create. So this is a standalone application. So this doesn't work for advanced Java topics like servlets and JSPs. So as we are going to see Java features in specific to core Java, so let us create a new package here itself. I just name it as new features. So I have just created a new package called new features. New features specific to version. For that, I'm just creating sub packages under that. One is Java 5. In this video, we are going to cover Java 5 features and Java 7. So Java 6, nothing much is improved. So Java 7, we have features. So for that, I'm just creating a package called Java 7 and Java 8. Sorry, I just created a class. One more package which is Java 8. So Java 8 is a lot of new features have got implemented, and you get to know once we are getting into that, and there are a lot of benefits that we're getting for a programmer. So very minimal code you have to write for doing a lot of operations. And Java 9. So these are all the topics we're going to cover in this series of tutorial first, then we can see the advanced Java topics. So Java 5 features. Under Java 5, what and all we have to cover? First, for each loop we can see, then we can see whereas. What is whereas? For that, in the Java 5, I'm just creating a class for each example. I can mention for each loop example. So before going to discuss about for each loop, first we can see how we can write a simple for loop, so that we can see what is the benefit of using for each loop. So using for each loop, I'm just taking an integer array. I'm having values like 10, 20, 30, 40. So I will be having 4 values. How to write a for loop? Int I equal to 0, I less than array dot length I plus plus. Just print the values within the elements. So guys, in Eclipse there is a shortcut to use. If you've gone through my CoreJava tutorial, you might aware by this time. You just need to type sys out control space. Control space, if you just enter, then it will print system.out.println for you. So the way to print the elements is array of I. That's it. You can see the output. So there is nothing crazy here. It just printed the elements within the array. What are the elements we have? So for that, what we have to do, we just write initialization of variable, and we'll be looping through the length of the till that length of the array, and we'll be incrementing an element. What are the variable we declared, we will be having incrementing. So all these operations we have to do in writing a standard for loop. So the way to write a for each loop is like, you just need to have for, similar to for each. For loop we have for loop, for each also having for keyword, and you just need to write a keyword with integer variable, integer data type, which is similar to the same way we declared here, because the elements of the array is integer, so the same data type we have to declare, then a single colon you have to put, then you have to write the array. That's it. So the way to print is sys out I. That's it. We're done with the programming. So it is similar to the for each loop we wrote. I just clear the output because I just want to show the results from the for each loop. So earlier we run the for loop results, and now we're running for each loop results. For that I just commented for loop, I'm just printing elements to for each loop. If we run this code, you'll be getting same results. See the difference between for loop and for each. We just write a data type, a variable with the data type, having what are the data type we have, the elements in array, the same data type you have to declare, and simply a colon, then an array. What are the collection you have, that you have to mention here. Then directly you will be accessing that value. So there is no variable assignment, and there is no looping through the length, and there is no incremental operator and all. We just avoided all these things and with the for each loops. So this is the simplest approach to write or iterate any elements within an array. The same way we can iterate through any collection as well. Suppose if you have a list, then you just need to give a list over there, and you can get the elements over there. So it will be like array or a list or set. I can say simply either you can give arrays or any collection. Collection means either you can use list, set, or anything. Type of list means array list or linked list, anything you can use, and hash set and all you can use it here. So any type of collection or any array you can give it. So irrespective of what data type it is, you can declare the data type respect to data type here. What are the elements of this collection is having, then you can give the collection here. Then you just need to access that variable. So having for loop using this lengthy process, and it will be simplest way to use the for each loop. So that is a major difference between for loops and for each loops. people who are already using this for each loop, they might get bored on this. But make sure, guys, this will be very much useful if the guys doesn't know how to write a for each loop. If they're looking at from scratch, it will be good practice for you to learn. So this is the standard way of writing for each loop. Now we can see the other features. The other one is varargs. So what is varargs? How to write a varargs, and what is the major difference between declaring varargs and other ways of declaring parameters. So as I mentioned here, varargs comes under declaring a parameter within a method call. Suppose, let me create a class for that. Just having a main method. I'm just creating one static method for mentioning this example, which is public static display names. Okay, what I'm doing here is it's a simply a void method. What it will do is it will actually display names, and what it is taking the inputs of string array. It is taking string type of values, which is names it is taking. So here I'm just using for each loop. We don't need to have for loop for that, as we just discussed for each loop, and I'm just using this for each loop how to print the elements. Here we see in the example for printing integer elements. Now I'm explaining print the string elements. For that I'm just doing for the variable name we have to declare. What is the variable name here? The type is string, right? You just need to have string variable. String name. Give the array name. What is the array name? It's a names. Or we can have name one or anything to make you to not to confuse. I just give the name one here. So I just need to print the elements here. The way to print is name one. That's it. So once you call this display name, and you need to pass the list of array of elements, then this method will actually print the names for you. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating string array names array. What I'm doing is James. I'll be having a set of values. Thomas. So I'll be having set of names. I'll be calling this method to print these names. The way to do this is just call display names of names array. So what I have done is I just created a string, then I'll be using display names method to print these elements. Let us print that. So what it does is just printed the names. So what is the concept of varargs here? The concept is, instead of doing this way, what I'll be doing, suppose if I want to avoid this data type, I don't want to pass it as array, I just want to make it any number of elements. So suppose this array if you're passing, so it will be restricted. The elements are restricted, and later whenever you're calling, you just need to create a fixed number of size of array, then you need to pass that array. So here the size of the array is fixed, it will not be changed. So you cannot add more elements dynamically when you are calling this method. If you want to add the element, then you have to go to that array and you have to modify that array. then only the values get passed. And to avoid that, what I'm doing is I'm just mentioning 3 dots. That's it. 3 dots I'm mentioning, and let us run this program. What will happen, we'll see it. It is functioning same. So there is no difference, right? If you put array type of syntax or 3 dots, so there is no difference, right? But there is a difference when you're calling. While declaring, you can have either of one, but when you're calling, make sure depends on the type you declared here, you can have option to pass the elements. So here you don't need to have an array of elements here. You just need to get these elements, cut all of them, just replace here. You delete that string variable. You don't need that string variable itself. That's it. So we avoided a string array and fixed length of elements we avoided. We just calling these method directly with the varargs option. So I'm just printing Thomas. So if I just want to call, suppose if this method is called in different places, in one place you need to pass with 3 elements, in one place you want to pass with 10 elements. Okay, name 4, name 5. So n number of elements if you are passing, so n number of values will be passed to this method, and it will be printed over there. See, there is no time limit if you are mentioning varargs. You can have n number of elements. Even if you want to pass one element, it will pass. It is allowing you can pass one or more elements in your optional way. Like that is the major benefit of using varargs. Even string args, whatever we having main method, right? Either here also you can change to either string array instead of the standard way we're writing, right? Instead of this, we can put 3 dots. There's no compilation errors you'll be getting. It will be run smoothly. How the application is running earlier, it will run smoothly. There's no problem at all. So even the main method also allows you to use the string args. So make sure whenever you're attending any interviews, right, try to program in unique way so that interviewer will be impressed easily. So instead of writing regular way like the main method you'll be writing, right, in your interviews, instead of writing main method with the string args with the array data type, if you just use 3 dots by mentioning varargs, so definitely your interviewer will ask you why you are writing 3 dots here. What is the advantage of using 3 dots? Then you can tell him. So there is a new feature is introduced in Java 5, which is varargs, which is what it is. The major advantage of using varargs is you can have a method with a varargs argument. You can pass n number of parameters dynamically. There is no number of elements is restricted, and we don't need to have a predefined size of array we have to declare, and we don't need to pass. If you mention a standard way of declaring a array type of variable, then you need to restrict the elements within the array. Then if you're giving 3 dots, which is varargs, then you don't need to have a restriction to pass the elements, number of elements, like how we seen in this example. So try to make interviewer impressing in this way, then definitely you will get a job in your way. So these about varargs. So I used to write 3 dots in my interviews, so that the interviewer will ask why you're putting 3 dots and what is that and what is the use of it. So interviewer might know or might not know, but he will definitely impressed on it if you're writing a different way of writing instead of the regular people are writing. So if you're writing unique programming, then people definitely get impressed. So that's a story about varargs. Now we can see the static import. So what is the static import? So we know static is about if you're declaring any method as a static, like how we declared here. So it will be belongs to this particular class, not to the object. If you're declaring any variable with the static, then that will be accessible to the whole application. It will take only one memory allocation, then it will actually spread to the whole application. So that is shared to whole application. The same way, suppose as we are writing system.out.println here, so there is a way to avoid this system. Always we are writing system.out.println, right? There is a way to avoid to system class here. The way is static import. Let us see that how it is. Usually how we are actually importing, import java.lang.system. So if you are importing this way, this is actually a normal import. The static import is simply about adding a static keyword inside, you just need to have a static import which is like this. So what I'm expecting is like under static.system, lang.system, what all the options are there, I just want to import statically. So the way to import static import is import, it's a normal statement you have to write, then you just need to prefix with static. That's it. This is called as static import. What is the advantage we'll be getting here? So what I'm doing is in system.out.println, I'm just removing system. I just wrote out.println. We'll see whether how it behaves. It will print the same output because system, even we are not writing system.out.println here, just writing out.println. It prints the elements. The reason is this class, once you do the system static import, then this class is directly accessible to Virax example class. So these are already available, accessible to this class. So that is the reason we just put the methods of that particular class, we directly call it. Even static import, we can do it for our own classes also. Even whenever you're importing this Virax example in somewhere else, then you can directly do the static import and directly you can call these methods without using this class name. Suppose if you want to call a display names method outside any class, then you have to do is variable names Virax example dot display names you have to call, then you have to pass the elements, right? So if you do static import, then you don't need to have this class name before that. You just need to remove, you just need to call display names. That's more than enough. Sorry guys. So these about a static import, like how we wrote system.out.println, we avoided system class before the out. The same way, if you are using Virax example in somewhere else, then you can have static import for this and you can avoid Virax example prefixing. So that's about static import. Now we can see what is auto boxing. I'll be having one more class. In generally, if you want to, there is a wrapper classes like integer, float, double, string. These are all the wrapper classes, like integer, float, double. These are all the wrapper classes, and the primitive data types will be having, for these things we'll be having int, float. So these are all the primitive data types. So these are all the wrapper classes. Wrapper classes will be allowed to be serialized. So wrapper classes are, you can able to serialize these classes, but primitive data types you are not able to serialize. Means it is difficult to pass through the network. Suppose if you are writing any RMA programming, a remote model interface or that kind of programming, it's preferred to use wrapper classes instead of primitive data types. because that will have data consistency and all. That's a different topic, guys. We can discuss it later. Here the topic is auto boxing. So what is auto boxing? I'll be having one integer variable. So I just want to convert it to integer object, which is wrapper class. The way to do this is integer I equal to new integer of a. So this is called boxing. Sys out I, if you print, then it will print the element value, which is 10. You will get that value. So if you want to unbox it, then you have to do int j equal to I dot int value. So these called unboxing. If you print j, then it will again print 10. So what is boxing? Converting a primitive type to a wrapper type, which is called as boxing. Converting back from a wrapper class type to a primitive data type, which is called as unboxing. So these are the major difference between boxing and unboxing. So what is auto boxing here? So usually before Java 5, people used to, if they are writing some RMA programming or something, so they have to do these operations. If they want to pass any integer value to the network, so they used to do these kind of operations. So the boxing they have to do, and when they are accessing that object, they have to do unboxing and they have to access it. With the Java 5, what is the benefit is auto boxing. The benefit is like you don't need to have these kind of conversions you have to do manually. They simply, suppose if I take b which is 20, so if I want to convert it to integer k, so if what is the standard way? New integer of b you have to write, then only it will convert, right? For auto boxing, you don't need to have to do these things. You just need to assign that value, which is b. That's it. So the compiler will automatically take care of boxing. These are also called as boxing in Java 5 or later. So from 5 onwards, 5 or later versions, you will be having these features. You can directly assign later versions. So you will be having directly, you can assign that value to any wrapper type, then it will actually automatically the boxing will happen. You just need to print that value. The value I'm printing k. So these are you can able to do this. The same way you can do the unboxing also. Suppose k is a wrapper type already, so I'll be doing a value which is z. What I'm doing is from this integer type, how we are doing k dot int value, right? We'll be writing k dot int value, we'll be writing, right, for unboxing. So here we don't need to write int value. For auto unboxing, you don't need to write this int value. You just need to remove it. You just need to assign that value to z. That's it. The automatically unboxing will happen. See, these are major difference between Java 5 and before Java 5. This is before Java 5. This before Java 5, and auto boxing is having Java 5 or later. So this is the difference between automatically boxing an element or manually doing a boxing. So these are all the benefits we'll be having in Java 5 or later versions. So that's about auto boxing. So now we can see what is enums. Constants. So it will actually, enums are actually maintains constants, a fixed number of constants you can have, and that will be accessible to everywhere. The major benefits with the enums are used for constants in real time. Now we can see what are all the points when you're writing an enum, what are all points you have to remember, and what are all you have to make sure when you're writing an enum. The first point will be uh, you can use enums when you're writing an enum. You should use a keyword called enum keyword. Like a class, how you're declaring with the class keyword, the same way you have to write a enum keyword before writing an enum. Let us try the practical example. So like how we are writing a class with the class keyword, the same way you have to write a enum with the enum keyword. The way to do this is public enum seasons we can write. So those what and all seasons will be having. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. So these are all the seasons we'll be having. I just having a constant data type which is enum. I just created it, and I'll be having a set of elements within that. So let me print those elements. So the way to do this is you just need to have we can use for each loop to print these elements. We can see how this will be. So for each loop, what it will actually take? It will actually take a data type of the value. So for each loop is used to print the enums as well, along with the list and collections we can use for enums as well. So I'll be using season, and we have to use season dot values. So which is array. Values is the one which is actually returns all these values. What are the values available within the enum? All the values it will be returned for you. Now I'm just printing yes. We'll see the results now. See, we have used a enum for keeping constants inside, and we'll be printing those values whenever we want. So this enum within this class, wherever you want, you can able to access it and you can able to use it. So that's a way of declaring enums. Either you can have it here, or if you want to declare, you can type any access specifier you want. You can specify public, private, or protected, anything. Or if you want to default one, you can use the default access specifier for this. Or the another way of declaring enums is you can declare outside the class. You don't need to have within the class. You can declare outside the class even. See, if you declare an enum outside the class also, it is accessible. We can try this. We can run and we can try this example now. So it is printing the elements. I'm just clearing the output for your reference. I'm just rerunning the program. So which is declared outside the class. This way also we can able to declare enums and we can able to access it. Like how we created a class, can't we create a separate a file for EM instead of having a class where we'll be having a enum as a data type, right? Can't we create a separate file for it? Yes, we can able to create it. Let's try this. The way to do this is, see, in new you'll be having class interface on enum you'll be having in Eclipse. Choose a data type as enum, then you can give whatever name you want. If I want to give a season, the same name I will be giving. Season enum I will be giving. So any name you can give that you wish. So it's just created a file like how we have a class, the same way it is created a file enum named as season enum. So the file name extension will be same Java, like how Java classes is having the same enum also will have Java extension. Here I will be writing the names. I don't want to waste the time. I just want to copy these names from here to there. So the 4 names I'll be having. I'm just copying these values and just pasting here. That's it. So our enum is ready to use. Let us try to print these elements. So I can have main method also. If you want, you can write a main method here. You can test it. So you can see the different approaches, right? You can first we declared enum within a class with the public data type, and we removed it and with the default data type, and we even tried with outside declaring enum outside the class. Now we are trying with declaring enum completely a new file where we are actually printing. We'll be having a main method over there, and where we'll be printing. Suppose I don't want to print all the elements now. I just want to get a particular value. Suppose winter I want to get it. So what is the way to do? The way to do is it's a static by default, so you can access all the elements like how static variables is accessing the same way by default. This enum values will be static by default, so you can able to access with the enum name. So winter, summer and all you can able to access. So what is the return type for this? Which is same as the class name or enum name. Let me get winter for you. So the return type is season enum. Let me print this value. Yes. So what I'm doing is I'm just accessing one value where I can print the elements. Let me run this. So the expected output is winter. We got this. What if I want to add more information apart from the just values? I just want to add more values to it. So like winter I want to add some value like 5. So this is the standard way of adding values for that. 10, 20, 30. Oh, it's giving error. To avoid these errors, first we have to declare an constructor for the type same. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating a constructor which is taking an integer type because our parameters are integer type. I just need to have it with the same type. What I'm doing is I just created a constructor for that. Then what I have to do is I need to have a variable. I'm just having an integer private variable. Any access specifier you can give. Int value. What I'm doing is for this I'm assigning from the constructor. The way to access this variable is this dot value equal to value. This dot value refers to the enum attribute, and this value is referred to constructor argument. Or if you want, you can give a different name. V you can give, then you don't need to mention this or something, or you can directly give value. Either way you can do it. So if you are confusing, then this way you can do it. If you are not confusing, then you can use this dot value equal to value. That way also it's allowed. Anyway you can use it. So now our enum is ready with key pair values. The key is this one and value will be 5. So these are we can have enums with key pair values. First we have seen enums with keys alone. Now we are implementing enum with key pair values. So now we can see this winter, what it will be printing. It's printing winter, right? Now I want to print the value for it. So what is the exact value it is storing that I want to see it? The way to do this is you just need to access this value. Simply value. That's it. For winter, what is the value? It's a 5. So this is the standard way of declaring enums. So one way is you can have a enum with the keys alone. Either you can have a enum within the class or outside the class, or you can have a separate file for enum so that you can access in other classes. And you can declare a enum with keys alone, or you can have enum with keys along with the values. And the way to access the values is you have to declare a constructor, then you have to access through the type, whatever the type you have defined, the same variable type you have to use, like how we used s.value, the same way you have to access the value. So these are standard way of declaring enums. So far we discussed about for each loop, Varax, and static import and auto boxing, and the enums we have seen different ways how to declare an enums and all. And now we can see the generics. What is a generic? So if you see any class, suppose this class, there is a main method which is taking string argument, or you can go to any other class where we can explain detail. So if you take Varax example, right, in this class we have a custom method which is display name. How the display name is working, which is actually taking a string argument, it is printing the elements. So what if I want to pass an integer element for a display names? I have to create one more method with the display names which is taking integer element, integer data type. What if I want to pass a float element? So I need to create one more method with the display names with the float data type as a parameter. So I need to have n number of methods for n number of data types. So I don't want to have these kind of syntax. I just want to have only one method I want, which actually takes any type. If I want to give string or integer or float, any data type, it should function for me. That is called as generics. Let us create a class with a regular class. First I'm creating, later I can convert that to generic class. First I will be having my class, I will be creating name as mygen. It's a simple class, nothing crazy here. It's a simple. What it is having, simply it is taking an integer element, it is just setting that value, and it is just giving that value. So for that I will be having one integer value which is int obj. So for setting this value, I will be having one method called set, where I will be passing data type as int this dot obj equal to obj. So what set method will do, it will actually takes an object, it will actually set to this value. Whatever the value it is coming, it is set to this variable. Now I will be having one more method which is get method, which is returning this value, int get. It just return obj. So these are all the two methods I will be having. One is set and get. So now I will be creating one test class for this. mygen test. What this test class? Let me close all these other files so that we can have only those two files to concentrate. So now I will be having mygen, which is taking a set and get method. Let me test that class. What I'm doing is mygen new. Let me keep this in main method. mygen. Let me add set that value. mygen dot set of 20 I will be setting, and I'll be calling the get method. Get, which is returning the result, right? Which is integer data type. The reason why I'm writing int here, it is actually the get method is returning int for me. So it is returning integer data type. That is the reason I'm just having integer data type. I'm just printing this value. So that's it. Typo. Wrong spelling. Okay, that's it. What's it simply doing? It's just setting that value to 20, and what is happening? Set method will call. This is actually set to this variable. Get actually returns what is the value available here. Should print the value is 20. That's what they expected, right? We'll see the result now. So it just printed 20. So there is nothing generic way implemented here. I just having an integer type. So to make this float, so what is the way you have to do? Float, everywhere you have to do float. Then all the methods you have to change it to float data type. Then here in your class, the type you have to change it to float. Then this will work. So it's giving as is float, it's giving 20.0. So what if I want to change it to string? Again, I have to go to, I have to change string. So I have to do this for every time. So if I want to make this change, right, if I want to use this class for setting, so 20 is not a string, I just need to use string data type, and here again I need to change string data type. So every time you have to change the class declaration, then only you will be getting expected result. So what if I don't want to modify every time? I just want to keep this class to work every time. So the way to do this is I can here only whenever I'm calling, I just want to pass my data type. What are the specific data type? I just want to pass it. I just want to set it. I just want to use this class for in terms of any data type. So the way to do this is you have to make this class generic. Every time changing this class is very hard. So you just need to make this class to generic. The way to do this is first you have to declare a type. What is the type? T. You can use any variable, but it's prefer to use T as a variable. So I just declare a type. So this is the standard way of declaring generics per class level. Then you have to declare, instead of string, I'll be using the same letter T here. The parameter also I'm just using T. The get method also I'm just using T. So you can use any variable, but it's good to use type T. I'll tell you why. So our class is make generic. So what we did, we just make this class, we just prefix suffixed with T with the braces. Then all the types we have used T. Now this is called generic class, and these called generic methods. So when you are coming to usage, then it is giving some errors and some suggestions, which is warnings it is giving. So if I want to make this to use to string, in our case, I just need to give, when I'm accessing this class, I just need to give string type. Like how we are using for array list and all, the same way you have to use for string type. That's it. It works for string for you now. Just change it is working. Now if you want to make it to integer, so you don't need to change this class declaration. You just need to, whenever you're calling, you just need to change the caller place itself. You don't need to change the class declaration itself. If you make the class dynamic, right, you just need to make the change here. 10 and here int result. That's it. 10 it works for you. Now if you want to change it to float, every time I don't want to convert this value, I just want to use it here. So what I'm doing is I'm just giving mygen.get here simply. So every time if I want to change it to float now, I don't want to integer now, float. Then you just need to set it as f10f, which is float value. Just run it 10.0. Again, if you want to convert it to string, it's a simple. Instead of string value, you just need to pass any name you can give simply. Am I change the configuration? No. I just declared a generic class. I'm just using the same class for different data types instead of changing the implementation itself. So this is the standard way of declaring generics at the class level and method level and variable level. So these are all the ways we can do it. So there's a lot to discuss about the generics, but we have to cover a lot of topics. But for now, these are very basic about generics, and this much explanation is more than enough for you to explain in interviews. So these are all the basic features of Java 5, and the next video tutorial we can discuss about the next features, which is Java 7. So Java 7 features we can see, then we can see Java 8 and 9 features, followed by our we can next to jump into the J2 EE topics. Thanks guys, thanks for watching.